Hello, welcome to Wednesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where I think we're going to have a very, very nice puzzle for you. I was actually hunting around on the internet earlier on for a Karotto puzzle because I thought we've not done one of those puzzles before, and it might make a good puzzle type to show in our software. I wasn't getting very far. I wasn't finding a puzzle that looked like it would be good for us. And I happened to receive an email from Axel Abrahamsson from Sweden. Now, Axel compiles under the name Dubax, and those of you who've been following the channel for a while may remember that name because he produced a stunning sandwich Sudoku last year themed around Mozart's birthday. It was a very, very hard puzzle, but brilliant, and he's just emailed me this one this morning. Now, so this is a sandwich Sudoku which has also got the diagonal constraints. You can see I've marked in on the diagonals the fact that these two diagonals also need to contain the numbers 1 to 9. And Axel says this puzzle is not as difficult as the Mozart one, and he's called it Summer of 78. I had no idea why. I've heard of Summer of 69, but Summer of 78 is what apparently this puzzle should be called, so bear that in mind when you're solving it. Now, if you want to have a go, do click on the link under the video. That will take you to our web page where you should see something very similar to what I am faced with here. So I'm going to solve this for you in a moment. Just to mention, if you do know of a good Karotto puzzle, do email it to us, crackingthecryptic@gmail.com, and we will try and get to that at some stage. Now, just a reminder, if you've not done sandwich Sudoku before, then how do these clues outside the grid work? Well, let's have a look at this 28 clue, for example. What this would be saying is, let's imagine we worked on this column and somehow we found there was a 1 here and a 9 here. Then the 28 is referring to the sum of the cells sandwiched between the 1 and the 9. So these 5 cells would have to sum up to 28. So you're always looking at the numbers summing between the 1 and the 9 for these clues outside the grid. And when there's a 0, that means the 1 and the 9 must be in adjacent positions so that there is no cell between them. And that's all there is to it. So with that, I'm going to have a go. Now, do I have any tips for sandwich Sudoku? Yes, I do. Mark and I solve a great number of sandwich Sudoku because we released an app last year based around the puzzle, and we're still updating that app monthly at the moment, so we create 5 new puzzles a month. Now, that means that we've got very, I suppose, proficient might be the right word with how to solve them. And the most important thing to do is to mark the cells that cannot contain the numbers 1 to 9. So you should always start with the 1 or the 9 that's given. There must be a 1 or a 9 given, or more than one, but otherwise the puzzle won't have a unique solution because the 1s and 9s will be interchangeable. So let's start with this one and work on that and see what we can see. You see we've got a 26 clue in the row. So that means that 26, the minimum number of cells to make 26 would be an 8 plus a 7 plus a 6 plus a 5, so 4 cells. So those 4 cells must not be a 9, so we can label them green. Now the 9 could either go here or here, but it can't go here. This is another important thing to recognize, is to work on the 45 principle. So we know this row will add up to 45 because the numbers from 1 to 9, that's what they add up to. So if we've got a 1 plus a 9, that's 10, plus all the sandwich cells, which we know add to 26, that's 36. So this cell would have to be equal to 45 minus 36 equals 9. Well, that's not allowed in Sudoku, so we know this square can't be a 9. The 9 is in one of those 2 squares, therefore these 2 squares are green and we must mark them off. Well, we can use column 1. Look, that's got a 2 in it. So we know one of these 2 squares will be a 2, but they're definitely not going to be a 9. And then the 9 will either appear here or here. So all of those squares can't be a 9 either. And in fact, look, we can use the 31 clue to disambiguate everything here. And that's because 31 plus 1 plus 9 is 41. So we know that the total outside the sandwich in this row will have to equal 4. Now that must therefore be a single digit because we can't use a 1 twice in the row. So this square must be a 4. There must be a 1 or a 9 in these two squares. All of these squares are green. And I guess we go back to the 2 clue here now. That 2 must be there. So that's a 2. That's a 9. We've done the 1 and the 9 in this box. We've done the 1 and the 9 in column 1. The 29 clue is interesting. 29 is such a big number, you can never have a 1 or a 9 in the central 3 positions in the row or column with a 29 clue. You can prove that yourself. If we try and put a 1 there, we know that the maximum we can make 4 squares inside the sandwich equal is 26. We've already looked at that. 26 is lower than 29, so this can't be a 1. So all these squares are green. That square's green as well, because if we put the 1 here, the total for the row should be 35, not 29. We do some logic with the 11 total here, look, because we know it's not possible to put the 1 and the 9 and the 11 sum in these 3 squares. That's absolutely impossible. If I put the 1 and the 9 here, 1 and a 9 here, I can't fill 11 into one square. So the maximum numbers of 1s and 9s in these 3 squares is 1. But I need 2 1s and 9s in the box, so that must be the other one. So there's a 9 there. And that's really going to be nice, actually. This is green now. In fact, the 26 clue is interesting, because now we have 3 squares outside the sum in this row. Now 26 plus 1 plus 9 is 36. These 3 squares need to add up to 9 without using a 1, so they are 2, 3 and 4. Which fixes the 29, look. Because now we can't put the 1 here. Because if we do, we know these 2 squares would have to sum up to 6, because that's 45 minus 29 minus 9 minus 1. But I can't now make 2 squares add up to 6 without using the 2 and the 4 that I know are up here. So this isn't 1, this is 1, this is 6, this is green, this is green. The 1 and the 9 here are fixed by this clue. I should have spotted that before. There's a 0 clue in column 9. So in fact that's got to be a 1 or a 9, therefore all of those squares are green, all of these squares are green. This must be a 9 to complete the 1, 9. In this box, this must be green, this must be a 1, because we know 11 must be 2 squares. Now, what next? Well, oh actually, yeah, lovely, we can use the diagonal. Look, 9's here and here. So if we look at this top box and ask about the diagonal, there can't be a 9 in any of those 3 squares because of this 9. This 9 rules out that square from being a 9. I can't put the 9 here because then this total should be 35 and it's not, it's 24. So there's only one valid square for the 9, it's there. So those 2 squares are green. We don't know anything about row 3 yet. But we know this square can't be a 1 because we can't have 3 outies in this column, because 28 plus 1 plus 9 is 38, so I've got a maximum of 7 outside the sum, and therefore that can't be a 1 or a 9. 1's here, 1's here, so there's a 1 in one of those 2 positions. Oh, that's nice, because again we can use the diagonal constraint. Look, I've not put a 1 on this diagonal yet, and these 2 1s are not on that diagonal, so the 1 is in one of those 2 squares, but it can't be here because we've got a 9 here and a 27 clue. In fact, the 1 must be there in this column because 27 must have a maximum of 2 squares outside the sandwich, so we can label all of those squares instantly. So now, and look, we can place a 1 here as well because the 1 can't repeat on the diagonal. Beautiful setting, isn't it? It's just beautiful. Now, what can we do next? We've got 28 here in this column and 2 squares outside the sum. So these 2 squares have to sum up to 7, but this square can't be a 2, 3, 4 or 6, so that's a 5, that must be a 2. So these 2 squares are 7 and 8. The 11 total here must be 5, 6 now, because it can't be 2, 9, 4, 7 or 3, 8, so it's 5, 6. 5, 6, 5, 6, so these 2 squares are 5 and 6. These 2 squares are 3 and 4 to complete the row. Those 2 squares are 7 and 8. These 2 squares are also 7 and 8. And these 3 must be 2, 3 and 4. But that can't be a 4 because we've got 27, look, outside. So these 2 have to sum up to 8. So they're either 3 and 5 or 6 and 2. 5, 2. Right, I feel like we should come back and finish off the 1s and 9s now. So let's try and do that. This is a 9. These have to add up to 8 without using a 1. We can put those as green, look. This is green because we've already got the 1 and the 9 in the row. 2 clues, so that's a 2. Sorry, I should have got that before. That's me being slow. All of those are green. This is green and this is a 9. Now this is a 1. These 2 must add up to 5 without, well, it's 2 and 3 and there's a 2 there. So that's 2, that's 3. 3 resolves the 3 and the 4 at the bottom. Must be a 4 in one of those 2 squares. 1 and 3 in this column. Let's make those squares green, otherwise it'll play up. And that one a 9 as well. These must be 2 and 6 because we've got a 3 and a 1 in the column already. Therefore this is a 5, this is a 6. The 6 is on the diagonal with this 6 down here, so look, that must be a 6, that's the only place that 6 can go here. And look, the 24 clue now matters, that must be a 5 because we know that the outies sum to 11. And again, just to reiterate, that's because 45 minus 9 minus 1, that's 35, minus the sandwich total, i.e. those squares, this is 24, gives 11, which is why we can write that 6 and 5 in. So we've used this clue, we've used this clue, we've used this clue, we've used this, there's a 2 here. Oh, that's from that clue. So this is a 3, this is a 5 now to make the outies equal the right number there. Look. We've used this clue now. We have not used this clue. 15. We do anything with that? 2 here, get rid of the 2 on this diagonal. Just wondering about whether we can eliminate any of the 2's because we seem to, yes, 2's here and here, so there's a 2, so this is a 2, this lead diagonal here, this 2 eliminates that square, these 2 squares mean there's no 2 in any of those positions. That gives us a 2 and a 4 at the bottom. This 15 clue now, we've got a 2 in there. So these 2 add up to 13. So this is a 5 or a 6. Okay. I'm not seeing how to tell which of those is which, so 5s, look, these 5s means There's a 5 up there. I could have placed that before if I'd seen it. Now there's a, if we look at this, there's a 5 in one of those two squares. That is worth noting, because you can see in this box, therefore 5 is not on the diagonal. Yes, and that is nice, because look, where do we put a 5 on this diagonal? It can only go here. That's the only square. We've used this 2 clue. We've used the 8 clue. We've used the 5 clue. So maybe, I feel like I've used an awful lot of the sandwich clues now. So it may be just a case of Sudoku and especially these diagonal constraints. Ah, yeah, in fact, look at this diagonal. Where can a 3 go on this diagonal? Well, this square can't be a 3. This 3 rules out that one, so I think this has to be a 3. Which means there's a 3 in one of those squares, which means I knew neither of these was a 3, and there's a 3 in one of, well, the 3 can't, the 3 must be here, because the 3, that 3 sees that square, this 3 sees that square, so that's a 3. There's a 3 in one of those two squares now. Oh, lovely. Look, now, look at this diagonal again. Where can a 4 go on this diagonal? This 4 rules out that square, so it can only go here. It's a very clever construction, isn't it? It's really been put, you can see it's been put together so carefully. So now that square must be a 7 or an 8. 4 up here is in one of these two positions, so it's on the diagonal, so that's not a 4. These aren't 4s, that's not a 4, so the 4 is in one of those two squares. This square must be a 7 or an 8. Oh, that's a 7-8 pair now. Ah, so the 2, I could have got this before as well. Look, the 2 here locks the 2 into one of those squares, which fixes this one as a 2, that one as a 4. So this has to be a 4. And this has to be a 7 or an 8. So this has to be a 7 or an 8. So now there's a 7-8 pair in this column. Oh, is this why this is called Summer of 78? Because there's loads of 78s at the end. These two squares have got to be 4 and 6 to complete the column. One of those two squares is a 4. Down this column, we still need to place what do we need? We need 4, 6, 7 and 8. I'm not seeing how to do that, to be honest. So I think we've used the diagonal constraint now, so I must be able to do more on the Sudoku. 6, look. There must be a 6 in one of those two squares. I haven't used this 15 total yet. Oh, there you go, this 6. This 6 and the fact these two squares are a 7-8 pair means there's a 6 in one of those two positions. That fixes that this is a 2, maybe this is what we needed to find. So now that's a 6. This must be a 2. There must be a 4 in one of these two positions. Oh, this is a 7 or an 8. So we're left with all of these squares that... These are 4, 7, 8. These are 3, 7, 8. Oh, I see. Oh, it's so lovely. What a brilliant finish. What a brilliant idea to finish this off. So the title is important. Have a look, see if you can see why. We can write in 2 squares here. That one and that one. Oh, that's really, really lovely. See if you can work out why. I'll tell you. It's because we know, if we look at these diagonals, we know that the 7 and 8 form a pair like this. So if I put a 7 or an 8 into this square, there's now nowhere on this diagonal where that digit could go. Ergo, this can't be a 7 or an 8. And the only digit it can be is a 3. Now look, exactly the same thing is going on with the 4 here. So this 7 and 8, if I put a 7 or an 8 into this square, there's no longer a place on this diagonal for that digit. So this can't be a 7 or an 8 and must be a 4 as well. That is great. That's so cool. Now, let's try and make sure we can finish the puzzle off now. So now I think there's only one place for a 3 in this central box, because that can't be a 3. So this is a 3, which means this is a 4, which means this is a 3. This must be a 6. That's a 6. 7, 8 pair there, look. So this square must be a 5 or a 6 to complete the row, and we've already got a 6, so that must be a 5. That's a 6. Therefore this is a 5. This is a 5 as well. This must be a 4. That's the only place a 4 can go in the box. This 3 fixes that 3 at the top. Do we reach this position now, where I think we can have a grid full of 78s, aren't we? Fantastic. And can you see how to fix it? That's why this 15 clue is in the puzzle. Oh, that's lovely. Everything has got a 7 and an 8 in it. But this square is resolvable because we've got 6 plus 8 is 8 there. That's got to be the 7. And now we're going to have fun because we're going to go 7, 8, 7, 8, 7, 8. That sees the diagonal, so we also get that one. Look, that fixes those two, this one. And I reckon, if I click check, that's correct. What a beautiful idea. Thank you very much, Dubax. That was absolutely brilliant. I love that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do let me know in the comments, and we'll see you soon on Cracking the Cryptic.